Hi and welcome to Adventures in Local Marketing. I'm your host, Christian Bannister, Director of Product and Marketing at BrightLocal. On today's episode, I'm talking with Levi Williams-Clucas. Levi is an SEO Specialist at StrategiQ, and we're talking about how to build trust signals within Google My Business. Now, there's no lack of discussion and debate about what is considered a ranking signal within Google My Business. But trust signals is slightly different. There is some overlap, but trust signals is something that's much broader, and it works as a double header. There's the trust signals your GMB listing gives out to potential customers. So would someone buy from your business? And then there's the trust signals it sends out to Google. Does your business seem legitimate and worthy of ranking? Now, Levi's going to go into much more detail about how we define trust signals, and she's also going to break down which GMB features send out those trust signals. We're also going to talk about what parts of GMB can actually negatively impact trust in your business, how these trust signals can carry through to your website, and finally, Levi will be sharing her top 5 tactics that will help you build and maintain trust signals within Google My Business. So let's jump into my conversation with Levi. I wanted to kind of kick things off by just finding out a bit more about StrategiQ, the agency that you work at, and your role there. So can you tell me and the listeners just a bit about what you're getting up to and how you help your clients at StrategiQ?
Sure. So we're a full service integrated marketing agency. So we do literally everything from website design and branding all the way through to the really technical SEO builds, all sorts of things. Have a look on our website if you want to find out a bit more about that. My role specifically, so I'm an SEO specialist. I've been at StrategiQ for 4 years. Just gone 4 years in May, which is very exciting because it's my I've been there a little while now, it is. I've grown a lot with the company. We've grown quite a lot in the last 4 years, and it's been really, really exciting to see it all changing. So my role, I cover most aspects of SEO, but my specialism is local. Everyone comes to me for what is this thing on Google My Business, or how does this work? I'm the go-to kind of how do we get ranking in this area for this client, and I'm also a big advocate for pushing elements of local SEO that would generally be considered only for small, tiny clients, but for everyone. It's applicable for everyone, in my opinion. So I'm particularly passionate about that, hence the kind of trust signals sort of focus for today.
Brilliant. So we'll dive into the topic of conversation, trust signals in Google My Business and local SEO in a sec. You touched on it a bit, how it's applicable to everyone. But what sorts of clients are you typically working with on the local side of things?
So at the moment, just by chance, we're mostly working with local sort of finance and actually the kind of general service type industries, so plumbing, heating, all that, those sorts of like bricks and mortar, almost, excuse the wordplay, types of businesses. We work with a couple of flooring companies, that sort of, all those sorts of people that are it really is a big focus to supply locally, and a lot of people like to support those sorts of local businesses, so that works really well for us. So they're the general kind of local businesses we like to support.
Nice. So it probably goes without saying that Google My Business is a big focus whenever you're working with a local client, but we're going to talk about trust signals. Now, most of our audience should be familiar with Google My Business and all of the features that kind of support lead generation and also generally how influential it is on rankings. But trust signals is one I've not really heard much about. So I guess the best place to jump off is, how are we defining that? What's your kind of definition of trust signals within Google My Business?
It is kind of a run seal situation. It is kind of as it says on the tin. It's sort of stuff that helps your customers trust you, that you're safe to, engage with or purchase from, or by your services, whatever it might be that you're trying to get your customers to do. There are things that encourage that behavior amongst your customers and also amongst Google. Let's be honest, Google is one of our customers these days. It behaves like our customers. So we need to make sure that what we're giving Google is the same as what we would give someone in real life if they came to us. So that's kind of how I define trust signals. That's like the easiest way to think of it is how you're going to make Google buy from you.
Nice.
If you've loads of those things, then Google's going to buy from you and you're going to do well with your customers.
Okay, great. So it's kind of a double header of the trust signals that you can send to Google, but also the signals that customers will see if they're engaging with a business's Google My Business listing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So you can probably dive into that a bit more, but you did mention that it's applicable to all businesses. Is that completely true? Is it that certain businesses, these sorts of trust signals are more important, or is it across the board, no matter how big or small you are, you need to be thinking about the trust signals that are being sent out?
I mean, on a general level, everyone should be thinking about it, and it's something that everyone can apply, but it's in different ways for each industry. So I wouldn't necessarily say there were industries that it was more important, but it definitely industries where they're more visible or more kind of applicable, easier to actually apply to your business. So retail, e-commerce, anything that is a tangible product or service, generally those trust signals are a lot more out in the open. So they tend to be things like reviews and that sort of thing. Other businesses, businesses in the finance sector or potentially the medical sector, those trust signals, those classic trust signals are going to be harder to, actually give out. So, and they're going to be harder to get. So a lot of people aren't going to want to say that they worked with so-and-so divorce lawyer and he was amazing, because that's a little bit awkward. So you're probably not going to get things like reviews quite as often with those sorts of industries, but there are other ways that you can add those trust signals. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily one industry it's more important. It's just you have to understand the different tactics to getting those trust signals in places where they matter.
And when you talk about trust signals, is this something that you use internally, or is this something that you're talking with clients about?
We're talking with clients about it more now than we used to. I think it's one of those things that's kind of always just been assumed. And I don't think that's specifically for my agency. I think it's just in general. It's assumed that reviews are good and this, that, having a secure website is good. It's kind of just assumed, and not many people actually go into the detail as to why it's important, which I think is why it probably doesn't have as much presence in how we're talking about our clients, particularly when you're going through branding processes or redesigns, that sort of thing. This is the sort of thing that's really important to bring to the forefront. And actually, we've noticed a difference in our internal stuff since we've been discussing trust signals as a more holistic way of looking at SEO. We've found it a lot easier to explain it to clients because we're putting a lot more on those trust signals actually doing stuff. And we know they work. We know they're important to have. It's easy to forget them. So we're definitely going that way. I still think across the industry in general, there's not enough education in trust signals and how they work and why they're important. But we're getting there, particularly where I am as well. We're definitely getting there.
Nice. So if you had to explain it to a new client, what context would you be giving it, or how would you go about educating them on the importance of trust signals?
So I think the first question I always ask is, why should I buy from you? Why would I engage with your business? Tell me why I would engage with your business. And then I say, well, show me that on your website. Show me, all your reviews. Show me your case studies. Show me all the people that work for your business. And these are all things that incite a little bit of trust in people and make them want to, engage with you. If you haven't got that, I'm not going to want to engage with you. So why are your customers? It's one of those kind of, are you actually doing, for starters, also, are you actually doing the job? to be able to get those trust signals. Are you doing a job worthy of people's trust? Which is a hard question to ask. Thankfully, we've not had to ask that question before, but it is something that's worth considering, particularly when you're bringing on new clients and you're kind of like that. If they're saying we're just not getting enough business, we need some help. One of those questions can be, are you actually doing good enough work to get that new clientele? Have you got the trust signals because it's your friends and family giving you 5-star reviews rather than your actual customers? So that's kind of where we start with, asking the questions and getting them to really think about it. And then once we've gone through that process of being like, right, what's actually missing? What haven't we got? And why haven't we got it? We can then go through that sort of problem solving process of how do we generate review requests? How do we potentially improve a service line that we're offering? How do we get old customers to give us case studies? All that kind of stuff. So it's very question based, but we like to try and get the client to engage with it first, rather than us saying, this is really important, you should really have it. It's much easier if it feels like it's they're promoting their business rather than us telling them what they need to have. I think people just respond to that a lot better.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's, so common with most agencies who are working with, say, small businesses that, they're always thinking like education is something I need to continually do. But actually, instead of kind of just thinking, I need to preach them why this is important, you ask them the questions first and they can almost arrive at, the understanding themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It works really well with giving the client a little bit of autonomy across what they're doing as well. So it feels like they're so much more involved in the strategy and what's going on. If you just give your clients a bit of space to feel like they're really getting involved, it's more fun as well. It's working with an agency that just wants you involved all the time. It's got to be more fun than just being told what to do.
Yeah, definitely. I guess if they can also do some of the legwork because they have buy-in, then that's going to mean things move much quicker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If it's coming straight from them, it's so much more genuine as well.
Is this stuff kind of measurable? And if so, kind of what sorts of KPIs or metrics is this going to directly feed into?
So something I've kind of struggled with since I've been doing a lot of research into trust signals is actually how to measure them. Obviously, things like reviews, really easy to measure. An average and how many reviews you get and how often. They're all the sorts of things that you can kind of work out. You can probably get some kind of fancy sheet that someone's built to give you all of that information. And obviously, you can get all that from Google My Business on the dashboard. Anyway, so that one's all right, but the rest of it, I think a lot of it, so for us, we use a little checklist it's basically called How Trustworthy Is Your Client? And we go through a checklist of things that they should or shouldn't have. Obviously, it's industry applicable. So some of them, don't have, we associate a point system to it. And it's essentially the ones that have the lowest number of points. They're the ones that need the most help. So a lot of the time it is just, have you got this or haven't you got this? If they have, we can kind of assess the quality of what they've got. So they might say, we've got case studies, but they might be 5 words. We've worked with so-and-so and that's it. So it is kind of a case-by-case situation. I don't think there's an easy way to measure how trustworthy your business is, other than just genuinely talking to customers. I think that's something that's quite often missed out and is much easier with smaller local businesses to actually discuss with customers how they feel about things. Would you recommend the little feedback forms that you can put on your website to say, would you recommend us to a friend? Please just let us know. It doesn't have to be a sign up or anything like that. All of that sort of stuff kind of adds up to a general idea. Mm-hmm. If anyone has any kind of good measurement systems, absolutely let me know. But I've only ever really used the reputation manager in BrightLocal for all the Google My Business stuff. Fantastic. I use that one all the time. But the rest of it, I think, is quite hard to measure. It's kind of got to be a case by case and how we judge what good looks like, because good will look different to every single client as well.
With the advent of digital marketing, I think there's this over reliance on everything having to be measured.
Yeah.
And that's because, there is so much that we can measure, and probably there's so much that we don't need to measure all the time, just drowning ourselves in, I guess, in a lot of numbers, metrics, and having KPIs that don't actually kind of align with, business goals. So,
Yeah.
It sounds like, well, maybe it shouldn't be measured is the kind of thing. And maybe the measure should be, are your customers talking about your business in a positive light? Let's start with Google My Business. What are the features that double as trust signals?
So obviously the most common one, the one we all love, reviews. I won't sit on that one too much because we all know how it works. I should hope, at least. If you don't, there's plenty of blogs on it on the BrightLocal website. But so a couple of other things that they do. So the Q&A function, I think, is a really important trust signal that is quite often left out of people's strategies. If you just look like you're answering people's questions in a friendly and accurate manner as a business owner, immediately people are going to be so much more comfortable to speak to you, or potentially even ask you something that they might think is stupid. Just little things like that can add to trust. Posts is another really good one. Posts are one of those things that, again, I think a lot of people ignore, and a lot of people do them wrong. A lot of people just think it's a social post. They're so valuable in all sorts of different ways. So posts, you can kind of incite an extra little bit of trust, like, we've got these new hires, or we've got this great new client, or promoting a case study in a slightly different way as you would to social media. It's almost a little bit pull marketing with Google My Business and posts, as opposed to the kind of push marketing in social media and email. So it's kind of those are the two that I think are the most underrated functions or features within GMB. But then also just GMB in general, having a profile that's accurate and filled out, all of that sort of stuff, having photos, having reviews, all those things coming together kind of doubles as its own massive trust signal, as well as the individual features.
Yeah. And I guess, there's obviously lots of content that, business owners or agencies working with business owners could be adding. So photos being a really good example, and obviously the user generated stuff as well, I can imagine has a real high trust factor associated to it. I find that, sometimes people are kind of viewing Google My Business as this is something that needs to be completed. It's like, just need to optimize it, or like, oh, my competitors have like 20 photos, so I'm going to add 25 and job done. Do you find that there's a kind of thing in the industry that Google My Business is effectively a completion thing, but actually it's more than that? It's about those kind of trust signals that can be sent out by high quality content.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it all the time. People saying, "Oh, I've optimized my profile. Why isn't it doing much?" And I'm like, "When did you last touch it?" "Oh, I don't know, 2018. I'm like, that's why Google thinks you've not done anything for like 3 years. All of that sort of stuff. I absolutely see it all the time. I think it's one of those things that doesn't get enough maintenance from businesses, particularly small businesses that don't have time. It's something that it's very easy to be like, that's done now, I'm sorted. I don't need to look at that again for a long time. It absolutely, as we know, should be updated weekly at best and monthly at worst. And I mean, we even have it now. Some of our local clients will be like, "Can you do this month?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, but don't forget, we need to update this, and don't forget, we need to keep it fresh and keep it going, because you wouldn't leave your social media profiles for 3 years. So why would you leave something that's even more visible and even more in front of people when they're looking for you than your Facebook page?"
Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest trust factors, actually. A dead social media profile of a company just has like flags straight away, and it's just almost like, just get rid of it, right? If you're not going to use it, just get rid of it. I mean, is that the case like in Google My Business as well? if customers can kind of generally see that just things aren't being tended to, does it basically have the complete opposite? And instead of the opportunity to build trust, it massively reduces trust.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially now that we've got the features that says last updated on certain parts of the profiles, I think that's going to become an increasingly bigger trust signal when people can see when things were last updated. I think it's quite obvious if it hasn't been updated for a long time because the pictures all have dates on, you know, the questions or the reviews are all old. For me, that's a proper turn off for a business. I don't really want to go to your restaurant if your menu hasn't been updated in 2 years. There's no way you're still serving exactly the same food as you did 2 years ago. So why not update it? Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, and I also think Google's now saying that we know that Google takes into account, you know, activity and things being fresh and updated the same way they do with blogs. So if we're leaving it to do nothing, but we're updating everything else, we're basically leaving the one thing that's really easy for Google to access as the least important thing. And it's kind of like, that should be the first thing everybody's thinking to update, because Google's going to trust us so much more if we're prioritizing Google over everything else.
And so Google, have they specifically said, you know, what trust signals they're looking for? So if we were to break it down by features, I guess there's the obvious trust signals we can send out to customers when they view the profile. But has Google actually kind of stated, you know, what things people need to be doing on an ongoing basis, or what features they're looking to build trust in a business?
I mean, we know for certain that reviews are taken into account, particularly for map pack rankings. But otherwise, it's kind of just a case of we have to hope that that Google's taking it into account. So it's been suggested, the whole keeping things fresh, keeping things updated. We get all kinds of studies about how profiles with more photos tend to rank better. Profiles that are regularly updated tend to rank better. But as far as I know, there's no like official, this is what we're looking for. Obviously, we have things like EAT guidelines, so we can use those as things like having team bios, all that sorts of stuff on the actual website. But in terms of what they're looking for outside of that, there's nothing to my knowledge that says outright what they're looking for. It's kind of just a guessing game of, this is what I think would improve my trust in a business, and therefore what I hope would improve Google's trust in my business. And we kind of have to do it that way. But to be honest, I think that's a solid way of doing it anyway, just because Google is like we said, Google is basically a customer now. Mm-hmm. And it treats everything like a person searching would, rather than being just an algorithm. So I think that's a solid way of kind of making sure you're ticking all the boxes. It's just thinking, how would I deal with this? How would I experience this if I was a customer? And you can test it on your friends if you want. You know, it's kind of like, would you want to buy from this business? They'll know exactly what you're doing after a little while, but you know, I often test it on my partner and say, what do you think about this? And he'll either say, oh, I like that, that's good, that's handy, that's helpful, or yeah, I'd buy from them, or, you know, or he'd be like, oh, not sure about that. And that'll give me a really good quick indication as to whether I think I'm ticking all those boxes for Google or not.
I think, yeah, it's a kind of important one for, I think, whenever you're doing SEO, to not just kind of go by what is a ranking factor, right? To like not do posts because, well, we don't think Google looks at those, and you're just like, well, what a missed opportunity to kind of put engaging content out or promotions out to customers. And so, you know, I guess it's the sense of like, just because something isn't a ranking factor doesn't mean it's not important for, I guess, what most SEOs are trying to do, which is, you know, help their clients, you know, generate more leads and grow their business.
Exactly. Yeah. It's SEO is much more user experience than it used to be. That's something I'm really passionate about, combining the two. And it's, I might be a little bit ahead of it, being like, only treat it that way. But to be honest, I'd rather be ahead of it than behind it. I'd rather do that than still be chasing algorithm updates. You know, as an agency, we don't tend to have to worry about things like that because we're forward planned and we treat SEO in that way. So we essentially treat our users in that way, and we look after our users, which means Google loves our websites. Yeah, it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, I mean, Google couldn't have been clearer, I guess, with the page experience update that, the experience of your website is going to be important in determining whether you should rank. But it's not just that. It's just like, well, if you had a crap website in the first place, then, why would you want that in the first place? Surely you want a website that works for your users and works for your business, helping them find the information they need or find trust in your business so they can potentially become a customer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's generally been a trend in SEO. I mean, I've been working in SEO, over 10 years, and way back when, where user experience wasn't really something that was considered a core skill set or a core area that SEOs needed to be working in. And then I think just over time, it's probably a bit of an evolution of kind of the maturity of the industry of, wanting to be able to show results, but also they've had to respond to the fact that Google, is evaluating websites on that level. And it's not just a case of, well, we've got tons of links. It's just like, yeah, but if Google doesn't want to rank your site because it's a steaming pile of dog mess, then then you're going to have bigger problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How would you say the kind of trust signals that maybe start in GMB then translate over to, say, the website? Is there a connection between the two, or are the trust signals somewhat separate?
I think it's one of those things you should aim for. So on almost all of our websites that have that kind of local visibility, we will have a address map box that always has the GMB API. So it's always got the star rating on the profile, and pulling in things like reviews from Trustpilot or reviews.io or one of the many other ones that you've got. That's a really good way of bringing off-site trust signals on-site. And the same goes with things like consistency across the two. So that is something that I don't know would be considered a trust signal, but kind of contributes towards, where if you've got a GMB profile and, I don't know, you're a shoemaker and you make certain types of shoes, if your categories on GMB, your products on GMB, and your services are all the same as the way it's presented on your website, you're kind of, that's more a Google kind of trust signal. But that consistency, I think, translates really well between the two. It's essentially treating your GMB profile like an extra website rather than just a profile. So that's kind of how I like to keep it, in terms of like putting them together, work and making them work together. And then obviously things like sending people to the right page when they click on website. Where are you sending them to? If it's a restaurant website, they're either going to be looking for how to get to you, which they can do on the profile anyway, or they're probably going to be looking for the menu. So you kind of know where you want to send them, or if perhaps it's a branch of many of your restaurants, you can send them to the appropriate restaurant page. That sort of thing, little things like consistencies like that are important to consider when you're kind of pulling that information across from GMB onto your site and encouraging that bit of trust. But I do think that's a bit more of a Google trust signal than a people trust signal. Slightly to contradict myself, but
yeah,
Google sees that much more than people do, but it still contributes.
Yeah. So I can imagine trust is something that just needs to be maintained. It's not a case of we've got great photos, we've got some good reviews. So what might be some examples of where you need to be consciously kind of building trust?
So obviously the easiest one for people is reviews. The one that we've had the most success with is reviews as well. So we've done all sorts of things to help our clients generate reviews, and we've helped them design little flyers and postcards, and one of our clients used to stick fridge magnets on their clients' fridges, and when they went to fit a boiler.
Nice.
All that sort of stuff that we encourage that, but we also encourage the activity to come from the client rather than from us. Same sort of thing as we were talking about earlier. It helps them engage and they start to do it naturally. But our kind of most successful one, I think, is automated email. So we work with a lot of e-commerce clients, and just that email afterwards, it says, "Thanks for your purchase. Please rate us." Or once they've got the delivery notification, hope you love your product, please give us a review. That sort of stuff works so well in encouraging that generation of those reviews. And when you've got a lot of reviews and they're all really good, obviously not all of them are always going to be really good, otherwise it's a little bit fishy, but
Yeah.
if most of them are really good, people are much more likely to be like, if you say to them, oh, I know we fitted your floor, could we come and take some photos and use it as a case study? They're so much more likely to be like, yeah, absolutely, let's do that, because you kept in contact with them, you sent them a nice email saying, please leave us a review, the name's already on your profile. It kind of just maintains that engagement, but it does require your client to be willing to do that as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned, not all of them being good, but actually that can sometimes be a good thing. Because I think there was an Amazon study where they looked at all of the review data on products, and they found that actually a kind of 5-star reviewed product was viewed as a bit fishy. People were a bit skeptical that, everyone had given it 5-star, even if maybe they were all completely legit. It was just, the best product ever. I sometimes think like trying to just only solicit, reviews from like the most positive customers, because, what happens if we, get a negative one, can potentially hurt your trust, because it's like, people are going to go, well, this doesn't seem right. Like, how can they have like no 4-star or 3-star or 2-star reviews?
Yeah. And I think one of the important things about bringing things like reviews onto your website, so that kind of collaboration between especially GMB and your website, is that, so we've had a couple of clients that have said, oh, it pulls my reviews in automatically and somebody's left me a 2-star, can you remove it? And our answer is always, no, we can't remove it, because when we remove it, we're not being transparent with your customers. You need to have that transparency with your customers. You're not going to do a perfect job all the time. You're not going to be 5-star to everyone. And some people are really hard to please. You could have done the best job you could ever have done in your entire life, and they'll still probably only give you a 4-star. That's just the way of the world, that you kind of just have to accept that. And if you're filtering it out, for starters, you're not listening to those people that are giving you reviews and giving you things that you can improve on. We've had a similar situation where we noticed something kept coming up in reviews that were negative, and it gave us an opportunity to fix something about the business that was fundamentally having problems. Mm-hmm. And since, we've had much better reviews on that service, that part of the business. So it's one of those things that's like, that is a negative trust signal if you've only got amazing reviews. Everyone should be, I would say the perfect is between 4 and 4.5 stars. Mm-hmm. Otherwise it does start to seem a bit, oh, is this just your mum and your girlfriend leaving you reviews and not actually genuine customers? No one loves you that much.
Yeah, for sure. So on the topic of negative reviews, how would you work with clients if they got, a 1 or 2-star review? Are you guiding them on how they should reply? Are they kind of well coached in the fact that they need to be doing it and doing it in the right way, and, not all of a sudden kicking off with somebody, because I can imagine that, that's something that can obviously hurt trust. Yes, we don't want just 5-star reviews, but how a business responds to a negative review can obviously be a turn off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something that we very quickly mention to clients. Obviously, we have access to the majority of the GMB profiles that we manage for clients, which means we get the notifications when somebody leaves a rubbish review. And almost every time we'll go to the client and say, have you seen this? Would you like us to help you draft something up to respond? A lot of our clients are getting really good at it now. So it's the general advice is be friendly. Sometimes your worst customers become your best customers. So if you treat those people well and say, look, we're really sorry you had a bad time. We're trying to fix whatever it was that was broken that made you upset, don't immediately go on the defensive is kind of what we tell our clients, because it's then a case of reputation management. Once you've done that and you've gone all guns blazing and told people that they're horrible words, you kind of lose that you lose your tone of voice as a business. You lose everything that's important about treating your customers with respect. And I think that is a big part of it. We're kind of like, guys, come on, you need to be nice to each other. These people could be some of your most valuable customers. So respond to them in such a way that you would want to be responded to if you had a bad time, because they're probably going to come back. If you say, we're really sorry, here's a 20% off discount code, or next time you get free delivery, or something like that, they're probably going to come back to use it. And you're probably going to get a good experience the second time. If not, third time's the charm.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's the one-to-one relationship with the customer that, you really should be trying to resolve. You shouldn't just, bury your head in the sand. And then it's the knock-on effect for every other customer who either sees a lack of response or sees you, responding in a really childish way or a really aggressive way. That's where you're probably going to feel the bigger impact.
Yeah, I think it's especially important with smaller local businesses as well, because you're likely to be known in the community. You're likely to have friends or family or, people that know who you are in the community who runs the business. So when you start on the defensive, you're immediately not only losing trust in your business, but you're also affecting potentially your personal life. So it's really important to keep an eye on and to make sure that whoever is potentially responding to reviews has the appropriate training and or some kind of guidelines for how to respond to stuff that's negative, because not everyone deals with it very well, which is fine, but you have to learn when you run a business.
All right, so you said that generally, it's a case-by-case basis for most clients, but if you were to say like top 5 things that without fail you're going to be focusing on for a client, what would they be in terms of either kind of tactics or features within Google My Business?
So reviews, definitely number one. As you can tell, I love reviews. Photography, I think, is really, really important, and almost every business can have good photography, regardless of what you do. Q&A, similar situation. You can have a lot of Q&A without disclosing any important information or anything that might be sensitive. So that's number 3. Number 4, probably posts. Again, if you've got it on your website, you can put it on GMB. It's just as useful there as it is on your website, and probably more people are going to see it, especially if you're a very small business that doesn't use your website particularly. You're probably going to get more interaction and more engagement on GMB than you would on your site. And then finally, I think the consistency across your categories and products and services, depending on what sort of business you kind of run, that consistency across everything. Obviously, that's not just GMB, but aligning your GMB with your website. Again, that can be applied to any industry. It doesn't necessarily have to be just for people who offer a tangible product that you can buy. It can be for people who do literally anything. If you provide a service, even if you only provide consultation, you can still do that. So they're my kind of top 5 things within GMB that we should be always looking at.
Amazing. Yeah, really helpful, I think, for everyone to kind of have a clear idea, because I can imagine it's quite broad, but those 5 things, if you're going to tackle anything, tackle those. How about photography? Like, are you working with clients to kind of arrange photo shoots? Are you leaving them to it? Are you offering them some kind of guidance on how they can get some high quality photos to add?
So we actually have a video team within the agency. So most of the time it will recommend that they use our team. If it's not something that they can fit within their budget, or something that they're not comfortable with, or they have their own photography service that they prefer to use, that's fine. We will often just have kind of like a consultation with them and say, actually, we think this is the sort of photography you need. Sometimes we'll get the external photographer, whoever's doing the work, If it's not us, come to us and say, is this right? Is this what you need? And that goes alongside with website projects as well. So obviously a lot of the time we're building websites and we're applying these beautifully taken photos into our websites. We can essentially be like, right, take it like you are taking it for a new website. That's what's valuable for GMB. And people photos with people in, absolutely just smash it. People love those photos. It's nice to make it personable. It makes people want to engage, and it makes people more comfortable with dealing with your brand. If you don't just look like a picture, if you're not just a logo, applying those people to it, it makes it just so much easier to engage with people, because there's a person on the other end of the phone or on the other side of the Twitter handle or whatever it is, however you're engaging with them. People being there makes it so much easier to justify. And it means you're probably less likely going to be really mean in a review if you had a bad time, if you can see that there's people that work there.
I think it's a really interesting way to kind of look at why high quality photos are important, because I can imagine that if you're say a pure SEO like agency, like we don't touch creative, actually high quality photos and high quality content on your GMB is going to just really help you kind of move the needle, and if you're just kind of focused on the rankings and lead side of things.
Yeah, exactly.
So we always ask our guests 2 questions, and the first one is, what's the one skill a local marketer or a local SEO should look to develop to further their career over the next 1 to 2 years?
So a lot of people are going to hate this, but I'm going to say networking. I'm quite an introvert. I don't particularly enjoy networking at like big events and stuff like that. It's not really my vibe. But getting involved in things that are, getting involved in stuff like this, mentoring programs, anything that can encourage a little bit of conversation, absolutely do, especially if it's locally based. So I have done a few talks and stuff like that for local business owners in the area, in Suffolk, and they've been really valuable for a lot of people. So, and it makes you feel good because you're helping people. You don't necessarily get loads of clients out of it, but it's good practice if you're like me and you're a bit of a nervous speaker. That information is going to help people, and it leads you to kind of make those networks that your client also has. So knowing a bunch of the other companies that your client has, goes and plays golf with, that could not only obviously potentially get you a bunch of new clients if you do a really good job, but also it means you understand who those people are engaging with, what they're doing, what they do in their free time, and it helps you understand their business better. So networking is, in any shape or form, 100% what I would say is the best kind of skill to build if you're not getting anywhere or you feel a little bit stuck with career progression.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've heard networking come up when I've asked this question. So, so you say you're an introvert, and you also said you're a nervous speaker. I mean, quite frankly, hasn't come across at all in this conversation. So I guess what would your advice be to, somebody who's feeling nervous, somebody who's a natural introvert, in like how you take that first step to get out there?
So for me, it was online, doing everything online. You don't have to go and meet loads of people in person. My kind of biggest step forward was being part of the Women in Tech SEO mentoring program.
Mm-hmm.
I had an amazing mentor called Miracle, and she taught me loads of stuff. A lot of the time, the nervousness and the introversion comes from not being 100% confident in what you're doing. And sometimes you just need that somebody else to say, you know what you're doing. And you need that little bit of reassurance from someone you don't know as well. I think that's quite important if it's someone you don't know. So reach out to people online. All it has to be is, hey, I follow your Twitter account, love your content. It doesn't have to have any result. You don't have to go out to people and say, please, can you be my mentor? It doesn't have to be anything really forthcoming. But just engaging with people online gives you so much more confidence when you then do eventually have to go to big conferences again. When Brighton opens up, there's going to be a whole bunch of new people in the industry that we've never seen before, because they've had an opportunity while everyone's online to build up their confidence. And that's where I got all of mine from. That's why I'm sitting here. About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this, because I didn't have anywhere near as much confidence in myself and what I could do.
Nice. So obviously where we are with the last year and a half, having to work from home, conferences being cancelled, it's kind of maybe leveled the playing field a bit, made it available for anyone to kind of go out there and, just potentially be building their personal brand, or just, making great friends within the community. So you mentioned women in tech SEO. I hear nothing but great things about that. So we'll drop a link in the show note if anybody who's listening wants to check that out and become part of that community. Final question is, if you could go back to when you first started out and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be go straight into SEO. I started out in digital PR. I had no experience, and my boss took a punt on me and said, we can teach you. And they did. And I decided I really did not like it. It wasn't my calling. And as soon as I got the opportunity to move into SEO, I realized the bits that I liked about digital PR were the SEO elements of it. And I've been a pig in mud ever since moving into the SEO team at StrategiQ. So that's what I would tell myself if I could go back 4 years. I'd say go for an SEO role, or ask if they can put you straight into an SEO role, because you'll be happier.
Nice. Well, I guess at least you know that digital PR isn't for you, so you're not going to have your head turned. Well, Levi, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you. I think that this topic is really interesting. I mean, when you suggested it, when I invited you to come on, it wasn't something that I was that familiar with. But actually, as we've been speaking, this is stuff that I know. This is stuff that is kind of a no-brainer if you are marketing your business online, offline, wherever. And it's really interesting to see how this kind of idea of trust signals can translate into the work you're doing with clients.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's definitely underestimated. So I'm hoping it's brought a bit of light to something that's really important.
Thanks to Levi for joining me today and giving us a really unique perspective on Google My Business. We know that Google My Business is a hot topic in local SEO, so it's great to be able to come at it from another angle and actually take a bit of a step back to understand more about the role it plays in building trust in a business. Now, I've got some news to share. This is the end of Adventures in Local Marketing, Season 1. Sorry to scare you there, we aren't going away, but we are going to take a little break to plan out Season 2 of Adventures in Local Marketing. We launched this podcast around 12 months ago, and we've had some great guests on and covered a wide variety of topics. We put this out there with a rough idea of what we wanted this podcast to be, and along the way we've learned a lot about what really works. So we're going to use this time to think again about how we can take the podcast forward. With Season 2, we want to have a theme that covers the entire season. So we're really excited about what we have planned, and we'll be able to reveal very soon when we're back with Season 2. Thanks to all our guests who have appeared on Season 1 and to everyone who's listened along the way. So it's goodbye for now, but we'll catch you again very soon.